Question 1. Jurisdiction. Personal jurisdiction and forum selection clauses. In situation where formal requirements conflict with practical considerations, technology company headquartered in California enters into contract with software developer based in Florida. The contract contains forum selection clause requiring all disputes to be litigated in Delaware. Dispute arises and the developer sues the company in Florida state, arguing that Florida has personal jurisdiction because the company actively solicited work in Florida, sent multiple payments there, and communicated with the developer via email and phone calls. The company moves to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction, citing the forum selection clause. How should the court rule? A. Deny the motion to dismiss because the company's contacts with Florida establish sufficient minimum contacts for personal jurisdiction. B. Grant the motion to dismiss because the forum selection clause designates Delaware as the proper venue. C. Deny the motion to dismiss because forum selection clause is only binding if the plaintiff explicitly agrees to it after the dispute arises. D. Grant the motion to dismiss because corporation can never sue outside its state of incorporation if forum selection clause exists. Answer. B. Grant the motion to dismiss because the forum selection clause designates Delaware as the proper venue. Explanation. Under MS Bremen v. Zapata Offshore Company 407 U.S. 1 1972, forum selection clauses are generally enforceable unless they are unreasonable or unjust, such as when enforcement would violate public policy or if the clause was the result of fraud or overreaching. Here, the contract explicitly requires litigation in Delaware and the developer voluntarily agreed to the clause at the time of contract formation. The court will likely enforce the clause unless the developer can show extreme inconvenience or unfairness, which is unlikely. Incorrect answers. A is incorrect because while the company may have minimum contacts with Florida under International Shoe Company v. Washington 326 U.S. 310 1945, the existence of a valid forum selection clause overrides personal jurisdiction concerns. C is incorrect because forum selection clauses do not require post-dispute agreement. They are part of the original contract terms. D is incorrect because corporations can be sued outside their state of incorporation if personal jurisdiction and venue are proper, but here the contractual clause D. Jurisdiction. Question 2. Discovery. Electronically stored information, SE, and spoliation sanctions. During comprehensive review of process that needs improvement, pharmaceutical company is involved in litigation over alleged misleading advertising practices. The plaintiffs request electronically stored internal emails between executives from the past 5 years. Before the lawsuit was filed, the company routinely deleted emails older than 3 years as part of data retention policy. After being served with lawsuit, the company did not take any steps to suspend its automatic deletion policy. 2 years' worth of emails were deleted after the lawsuit was initiated. The plaintiffs moved for sanctions under Rule 37E of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. What is the likely outcome? A. The court will impose severe sanctions, including dismissal of the company's defenses because failure to preserve SE is always sanctionable offense. B. The court may impose sanctions only if the plaintiffs can prove that the lost emails contained evidence critical to their case and that the deletion was intentional. C. The court will not impose any sanctions because the deletion was routine business practice before litigation began. D. The court will require the company to restore the deleted emails, even if they cannot be recovered. Answer. B. The court may impose sanctions only if the plaintiffs can prove that the lost emails contained evidence critical to their case and that the deletion was intentional. Explanation. Under Rule 37E of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, spoliation sanctions can be imposed only if 1. The lost SE should have been preserved in anticipation of litigation, 2. The party failed to take reasonable steps to preserve it, and 3. The information cannot be restored or replaced through additional discovery if intent to deprive the opposing party of evidence is found. More severe sanctions, such as an adverse inference, instruction, or default judgment, can be imposed. Incorrect answers. A is incorrect because sanctions are not automatic. The court must find that the company acted in bad faith or that the missing evidence was crucial. C is incorrect because once lawsuit is reasonably anticipated, litigant hold must be implemented to prevent destruction of relevant evidence. Uvulake v. Ubbs Warburg LLC 220F RD 212S D and Y 2003. D is incorrect because if the emails are permanently deleted and cannot be restored, the court cannot order their recovery but may impose other sanctions. Question 3. Trial procedures. Judgment as matter of law, JMAR, and directed verdict. In high-stakes environment where multiple challenges must be managed, a plaintiff sues hospital for medical malpractice, claiming that surgeon's negligence led to severe complications. The plaintiff presents expert testimony suggesting that the surgeon deviated from the standard of care. However, the defendant hospital argues that the plaintiff's expert is unreliable, and that the plaintiff failed to provide sufficient evidence linking the surgeon's actions to the complications. After the plaintiff rests its case, the defendant moves for judgment as matter of law, JMAR, under Rule 58 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. What is the most appropriate ruling for the court? A. Grant the JMAR motion because the defendant disputes the expert's reliability and unreliable testimony cannot support claim. B. Deny the JMAR motion because the plaintiff has presented some evidence and credibility determinations are for the jury. C. Grant the JMAR motion because the plaintiff must prove their case beyond reasonable doubt and there is insufficient evidence to meet that burden. D. Deny the JMAR motion and allow to proceed only if the defendant presents counter-expert to refute the plaintiff's claims. Answer. B. Deny the JMAR motion because the plaintiff has presented some evidence and credibility determinations are for the jury. Explanation. Under Rule 58 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, a court may grant JMAR only if no reasonable jury could find in favor of the non-moving party based on the evidence presented. The plaintiff has introduced expert testimony, which is sufficient to create a factual dispute for the jury. Credibility determinations and weighing evidence are exclusively for the jury, not the judge at this stage. Incorrect answers. A is incorrect because the reliability of expert testimony is assessed under Daubert v. Merrill Dow Pharmaceuticals, Inc. 509 U.S. 579, 1993, but an expert's presence alone can suffice to create jury question. C is incorrect because civil cases require proof by preponderance of the evidence, not beyond reasonable doubt. D is incorrect because the burden of proof is on the plaintiff and the defendant does not need to present its own expert to defeat JMAR motion. Question 4. In a high-stakes environment where multiple challenges arise due to concurrent state and federal lawsuits, a plaintiff initially files a claim in state court. The defendant, a corporation incorporated in Delaware with its principal place of business in California, removes the case to federal court under 28 U.S.C. SS 1441, citing diversity jurisdiction. However, during the proceedings, it is discovered that one of the co-defendants is also California resident. The plaintiff then moves to remand the case back to state court. Given the constraints of removal jurisdiction, how should the federal court rule? A. Deny the motion to remand because the plaintiff initially chose to file the lawsuit in state court and removal has already occurred. B. Deny the motion to remand because complete diversity existed at the time of filing and subsequent revelations do not affect jurisdiction. C. Grant the motion to remand because removal was improper under the Forum Defendant Rule in 28 U.S.C. SS 1441 B2. D. Grant the motion to remand because subject matter jurisdiction cannot be based solely on diversity once resident co-defendant is found. Answer. C. Grant the motion to remand because removal was improper under the Forum Defendant Rule in 28 U.S.C. SS 1441 B2. Explanation. Under 28 U.S.C. SS 1441 B2, removal based on diversity jurisdiction is not permitted if any defendant is citizen of the state where the lawsuit was originally filed. The Forum Defendant Rule here, because one of the co-defendants is California resident, removal was improper. A. Incorrect. Plaintiff's initial choice of forum does not prevent them from challenging improper removal. B. Incorrect. Diversity must exist at the time of removal, and the Forum Defendant Rule is jurisdictional defect, making removal improper. D. Incorrect. Diversity jurisdiction remains valid in cases where complete diversity exists, but the issue here is the Forum Defendant Rule, not just diversity itself. Question 5. During an emergency response where multiple areas are impacted by court injunctions, a federal district court issues a preliminary injunction to halt a corporation's construction project, citing potential environmental harm. The defendant corporation immediately seeks an interlocutory appeal, arguing that the injunction was improperly granted. Under what circumstances can the appellate court review the preliminary injunction before final judgment? A. The appellate court can hear the appeal under the collateral order doctrine because the injunction substantially affects the defendant's rights. B. The appellate court can only review the injunction if the trial court explicitly certifies it for appeal under 28 U. SC. SS 1292B-C. The appellate court cannot review the injunction because interlocutory appeals are generally not allowed under the final judgment rule. D. The appellate court can review the injunction as matter of right under 28 U.S.C. SS 1292A1, which allows appeals of orders granting or denying injunctions. Answer D. The appellate court can review the injunction as a matter of right under 28 U.S.C. SS 1292A1, which allows appeals of orders granting or denying injunctions. Explanation. Under 28 U.S.C. SS 1292A1, interlocutory appeals of orders granting or denying injunctions are allowed as matter of right, making it unnecessary to rely on discretionary mechanisms like the collateral order doctrine. A. Incorrect. The collateral order doctrine applies only in very limited circumstances and is unnecessary here because SS 1292A1 directly provides for appeals of injunctions. B. Incorrect. Certification under SS 1292B is required for other interlocutory orders but is not needed for injunction-related appeals, which are permitted under SS 1292A1. C. Incorrect. Interlocutory appeals are generally not permitted under the final judgment rule. Exceptions exist, such as the explicit exception for injunctions under SS 1292A1. Question 6. In a scenario where efficiency decreases across multiple court systems, a plaintiff brings a class action lawsuit in federal court under Rule 23(b)(3 seeking damages for deceptive trade practices. The defendant argues that individual issues predominate over common ones, making certification improper. Which of the following factors would most likely lead to the denial of class certification under Rule 23? 3a. The claims of the class members arise from different state laws, making adjudication overly complex. B. The number of class members is too large, making individual litigation impractical. C. The defendant's conduct is the same for all class members, and the damages stem from uniform policy. D. The class members have suffered nearly identical injuries from single, uniform practice of the defendant. Answer A. The claims of the class members arise from different state laws, making adjudication overly complex. Explanation. Under Rule 23(b)(3, a class action is proper if common legal and factual issues predominate over individual issues. When multiple state laws apply, courts may find that individual issues predominate, making class certification inappropriate. B. Incorrect. A large number of class members supports and undermines class certification. C. Incorrect. If the defendant's conduct is uniform across all plaintiffs, this supports class certification. D. Incorrect. Similar injuries from uniform practice indicate that common issues do predominate, which would favor class certification. Question 7. During a seamless transition where continuity must be maintained, a plaintiff moves for summary judgment under Rule 56, arguing that no genuine dispute of material fact exists. The defendant, however, contends that discovery is incomplete and submits an affidavit under Rule 56(d), stating that further discovery is needed before responding. How should the court proceed? A. Grant summary judgment immediately because the defendant failed to present enough evidence to create a genuine dispute. B. Grant the defendant's Rule 56(d) motion and allow more time for discovery before ruling on summary judgment. C. Deny the Rule 56(d) motion and proceed to rule on the summary judgment motion based on available evidence. D. Postpone summary judgment indefinitely until all possible discovery completed. Answer. B. Grant the defendant's Rule 56(d) motion and allow more time for discovery before ruling on summary judgment. Explanation. Under Rule 56(d), if non-moving party shows that it cannot present facts essential to oppose summary judgment due to incomplete discovery, the court must allow additional time for discovery before ruling. A. Incorrect. Granting summary judgment would be improper if the non-moving party demonstrates that relevant evidence remains undiscovered. C. Incorrect. Denying Rule 56(d) motion without considering the need for further discovery would be an abuse of discretion. D. Incorrect. Discovery does not have to be completely finished, but reasonable opportunity to gather material facts must be given. Question 8. In a scenario where efficiency decreases across multiple departments, a plaintiff files a lawsuit claiming damages for breach of contract. The defendant responds by filing a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim under Rule 12(b)(6. Which of the following is the primary standard? a court uses when evaluating a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim. A. The court must accept the truth of the plaintiff's factual allegations and evaluate whether those allegations are legally sufficient to state a claim. B. The court must determine whether the defendant is likely to win at trial. C. The court must assess whether the plaintiff has submitted enough evidence to prevail. D. The court must review the case to determine if there is any possibility of a settlement. Answer A. The court must accept the truth of the plaintiff's factual allegations and evaluate whether those allegations are legally sufficient to state a claim. Explanation. When evaluating a Rule 12b(6) motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim, the court accepts all of the plaintiff's factual allegations as true and determines whether those allegations are legally sufficient to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. Typically granted when the plaintiff's complaint fails to present a claim that meets the required legal elements, not on the merits of the case itself. Question 9. While investigating a complicated issue between different contractors, the court must determine whether it has subject matter jurisdiction over a case involving a dispute between parties from different states. What legal principle governs diversity jurisdiction under 28 U.S.C. SS 1332? A. The amount in controversy must exceed $1 million. B. The parties must be citizens of different states, and the amount in controversy must exceed $75,000. C. The defendant must be foreign national for diversity jurisdiction to apply. D. The case must involve issues of federal law to qualify for diversity jurisdiction. Answer B. The parties must be citizens of different states, and the amount in controversy must exceed $75,000. Explanation. Diversity jurisdiction under 28 U.S.C. SS 1332 allows federal courts to hear cases where the parties are from different states and the amount in controversy exceeds $75,000. The purpose is to prevent state bias in cases involving parties from different states. It is not enough for there to be parties from different states. The monetary threshold must also be met. Question 10. During a comprehensive review of a process that needs improvement, the defendant in a case involving personal injury claims argues that the case should be dismissed due to forum nonconvenience. Which of the following best explains the doctrine of forum nonconvenience? A. The court dismisses the case because the claim does not arise under the court's subject matter jurisdiction. B. The court dismisses the case because it finds another forum is more convenient for the parties and witnesses. C. The court dismisses the case because it believes the defendant is likely to prevail. D. The court dismisses the case because the plaintiff did not comply with the local court rules. Answer B. The court dismisses the case because it finds another forum is more convenient for the parties and witnesses. Explanation. Forum nonconvenience is a doctrine that allows a court to dismiss a case if another court or forum is significantly more convenient for the parties, witnesses, or judicial system to resolve the case. It involves evaluating factors such as the location of evidence where the incident occurred and where the witnesses are located. Decision is not based on the merits of the case, but on convenience. Question 11. In a high-stakes environment where multiple challenges are present, a defendant files a motion for judgment on the pleadings under Rule 12c. Which of the following is the key difference between a motion for judgment on the pleadings and a motion to dismiss under Rule 12b(6)? A. A motion for judgment on the pleadings can only be filed after the defendant has answered the complaint. B. A motion for judgment on the pleadings is filed before the defendant answers the complaint. C. A motion for judgment on the pleadings requires the court to examine the evidence presented. D. A motion for judgment on the pleadings can only be filed when the case involves a diversity jurisdiction claim. Answer A. A motion for judgment on the pleadings can only be filed after the defendant has answered the complaint. Explanation. A motion for judgment on the pleadings under Rule 12c is filed after the answer to the complaint has been filed, and it asserts that even taking the facts alleged in the complaint as true, the plaintiff is not entitled to relief. Unlike a motion to dismiss, which is based solely on the complaint, this motion considers the entire, which include both the complaint and the answer. Question 12. While analyzing the root causes of sequential problems in a complex commercial dispute, the defendant files a motion for summary judgment under Rule 56, asserting there is no genuine dispute of material fact. What must the plaintiff do in response to this motion? A. The plaintiff must present sufficient evidence showing that there is a genuine dispute of material fact that requires a trial. B. The plaintiff must submit a legal brief outlining why the court should dismiss the motion. C. The plaintiff must waive the right to a trial by jury. D. The plaintiff must submit additional pleadings to further explain the facts of the case. Answer A. The plaintiff must present sufficient evidence showing that there is a genuine dispute of material fact that requires a trial explanation under Rule 56. The party opposing summary judgment. Here, the plaintiff must provide evidence that shows there is a genuine dispute of material fact. This prevents the court from granting summary judgment when facts are disputed and must be resolved by a jury or judge. Simply shownly, arguments without evidence will not suffice. Question 13. During an emergency response where multiple areas are impacted, the defendant in a complex case involving property damage files a motion for a temporary restraining order (TRO). What is the primary purpose of a TRO in civil litigation? A. To preserve the status quo, prevent irreparable harm before a full hearing can be conducted. B. To compel the defendant to produce evidence in the case. C. To award the plaintiff damages without a trial. D. To dismiss the case without prejudice. Answer A. To preserve the status quo and prevent irreparable harm before a full hearing can be conducted. Explanation. A TRO is an emergency order issued to maintain the status quo and prevent irreparable harm before a full hearing can occur. It is a temporary measure designed to preserve rights or property while the court evaluates whether a longer-term injunction should be granted. TROs are not meant to resolve the entire case but address immediate concerns. Question 14. In a case where multiple parties have different objectives, the court considers whether a plaintiff's claim meets the requirements for class action certification under Rule 23. Which of the following is not one of the prerequisites for certifying a class action under Rule 23? A. The class must be so numerous that joining all members is impractical. Numerosity. B. The claims or defenses of the representative parties must be typical of those of the class. Typicality. C. The representatives must have a direct financial interest in the outcome of the lawsuit. Adequacy. D. The class must be defined by the common question of law or fact. Commonality. Answer C. The representatives must have a direct financial interest in the outcome of the lawsuit. Adequacy. Explanation. Under Rule 23, to certify a class action, the plaintiff must show that the class is numerous, the claims are typical of the class, and that the commonality requirement is met. B. There must be common questions of law or fact that affect all class members. The adequacy requirement refers to whether the class representatives can fairly and adequately protect the interests of the class, but it does not require a direct financial interest in the outcome. Question 15. When developing a solution that must address opposing needs in a complex litigation, the defendant files a motion to compel under Rule 37 for failure to produce requested documents. Which of the following scenarios does not justify the filing of a motion to compel? A. The defendant refuses to produce documents that are irrelevant to the case. B. The defendant fails to produce documents without providing any valid objection. C. The defendant produces documents after the deadline but fails to explain the delay. D. The defendant claims the requested documents are protected by attorney-client privilege. Answer A. The defendant refuses to produce documents that are irrelevant to the case. Explanation. A motion to compel can be filed when a party fails to produce documents that are relevant to the case and there is no valid objection. If the documents are irrelevant, the producing party does not have to comply with the request, and thus a motion to compel would not be appropriate. The other options involve potential failures to comply with discovery that could justify a motion to compel. Question 16. In a situation where formal requirements conflict with existing practices, a defendant in a breach of contract case files a motion to dismiss under Rule 12(b)(6). The defendant argues that the plaintiff's complaint does not state a valid claim for relief. Which of the following must the court evaluate when ruling on this motion? A. The court evaluates the merits of the defendant's arguments, including factual disputes. B. The court evaluates whether the plaintiff's complaint is sufficient, assuming all factual allegations are true. C. The court evaluates the defendant's financial condition. D. The court evaluates whether the defendant has waived the right to contest the claim. Answer B. The court evaluates whether the plaintiff's complaint is sufficient, assuming all factual allegations are true. Explanation. When considering a motion to dismiss under Rule 12(b)(6), the court assumes the truth of the plaintiff's factual allegations and evaluates whether those facts, if proven, would entitle the plaintiff to relief. The motion tests the legal sufficiency of the complaint, not the factual disputes. Question 17. While managing a hybrid approach where timing issues arise, a defendant files a motion for judgment as a matter of law (JMOL) in a civil trial. What is the purpose of a JMOL motion? A. To allow the court to issue a final judgment before the jury deliberates. B. To request the court to dismiss the case based on a procedural error. C. To argue that no reasonable jury could find for the opposing party. D. To ask the court to award damages before the trial begins. Answer C. To argue that no reasonable jury could find for the opposing party. Explanation. A motion for judgment as a matter of law (JMOL) is filed during trial when one party argues that no reasonable jury could find in favor of the opposing party based on the evidence presented. The purpose is to ask the court to grant judgment in favor of the moving party, often before the jury deliberates. Question 18. In an environment where different components must interact, the plaintiff alleges negligence and files a motion for summary judgment. Under which circumstance could a court grants summary judgment in a negligence case? A. The defendant admits to having committed the act of negligence. B. The plaintiff provides evidence that no reasonable jury could find the defendant was not negligent. C. The defendant fails to file a response to the motion. D. The court decides to expedite the trial due to judicial economy. Answer B. The plaintiff provides evidence that no reasonable jury could find the defendant was not negligent. Explanation. Summary judgment is granted when the movement, in this case the plaintiff, provides sufficient evidence that no reasonable jury could find for the opposing party. The court will evaluate if there is a genuine dispute of material fact. If the defendant has failed to respond to the motion, the court may rule in favor of the plaintiff, but primary criterion is the lack of a factual dispute. Question 19. During the introduction of new methods where coordination between parties is required, the defendant challenges a plaintiff's lawsuit based on lack of personal jurisdiction. Which of the following is not a valid ground for personal jurisdiction over the defendant? A. The defendant is a resident of the state where a lawsuit is filed. B. The defendant has engaged in significant business activities within the state. C. The defendant has minimal contact with the state and was merely passing through. D. The defendant consented to the jurisdiction in a contract. Answer C. The defendant has minimal contact with the state and was merely passing through. Explanation. Personal jurisdiction requires that a defendant has certain minimum contacts with the forum state. Minimal contact, such as merely passing through, typically does not suffice to establish jurisdiction unless other factors are present. A defendant can consent to personal jurisdiction through contracts or by being a resident of a state. Question 20. In a multi-location scenario where consistency requirements must be met, the court considers a motion to compel discovery from a party. Which of the following is true about a party's obligation to respond to discovery requests under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure? A. The party must respond fully to discovery requests even if the requested information is burdensome. B. The party may refuse to provide information that is confidential or privileged. C. The party is obligated to provide information only if requested by the opposing party. D. The party must provide information related to legal strategy in communications with their attorneys. Answer B. The party may refuse to provide information that is confidential or privileged. Explanation. Under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, parties are required to respond to discovery requests unless the information is privileged, such as attorney-client communications, or confidential. Parties cannot refuse discovery requests solely due to burden unless they demonstrate that the request is unreasonable or disproportionate. Question 21. While analyzing inconsistencies across various units of a corporation, the defendant files a motion to strike under Rule 12F, claiming that certain allegations in the plaintiff's complaint are irrelevant or immaterial. Which of the following best describes the purpose of motion to strike? A. To challenge the legal sufficiency of the claims presented in the complaint. B. To request the removal of irrelevant or immaterial allegations in the pleadings. C. To seek summary judgment based on factual disputes. D. To compel the plaintiff to submit additional documents. Answer B. To request the removal of irrelevant or immaterial allegations in the pleadings. Explanation. A motion to strike under Rule 12F is used to request that removal of irrelevant, immaterial, or redundant allegations or defenses from the pleadings. This motion does not challenge the overall sufficiency of the claim, but rather focuses on inappropriate content within the complaint. Question 22. In a case where multiple parties have different objectives, the plaintiff files a motion for class certification. Under which condition would a court grant class certification under Rule 23? A. If the class is numerous, there are common questions of law or fact, and the representative parties can adequately represent the class. B. If the defendant consents to the certification of the class. C. If the claims of the class members are identical. D. If the plaintiff can demonstrate financial hardship on behalf of all class members. Answer A. If the class is numerous, there are common questions of law or fact, and the representative parties can adequately represent the class. Explanation. To certify a class action, a court must find that the class is numerous, that there are common issues of law or fact, and that the class representatives can adequately protect the interests of the class. The class does not need to have identical claims, and financial hardship is not a requirement for certification. Question 23. When implementing backup procedures across various locations, the defendant files a motion for a protective order in a complex commercial litigation case. Which of the following is the primary purpose of a protective order? A. To prohibit discovery of information that is confidential or privileged. B. To dismiss the case without prejudice. C. To extend the time for responding to discovery requests. D. To compel the opposing party to provide certain evidence. Answer A. To prohibit discovery of information that is confidential or privileged. Explanation. A protective order is issued to protect a party from undue burden or expense during discovery. It may be used to limit or prevent the discovery of confidential, privileged, or irrelevant information. It is not used to compel or extend deadlines. Question 24. During a critical transition period where existing processes need to be revised, the defendant in a fraud case files a motion to dismiss under Rule 12b-6, claiming that the plaintiff has failed to state a claim for fraud. Which of the following must the plaintiff allege to survive a motion to dismiss for fraud? A. The plaintiff must allege that the defendant made false statements with the intent to deceive. B. The plaintiff must present detailed documents proving the fraud occurred. C. The plaintiff must demonstrate that the defendant has already been convicted of fraud. D. The plaintiff must show that damages have been paid to the victim. Answer A. The plaintiff must allege that the defendant made false statements with the intent to deceive. Explanation. To plead fraud under Rule 12b-6, the plaintiff must allege the necessary elements of fraud, including that the defendant made false statements with the intent to deceive and that the plaintiff reasonably relied on those statements to their detriment. Detailed documents or evidence are not required at the pleading stage. Question 25. In a high-stakes environment where multiple challenges arise during a legal dispute, a defendant files a motion for a change of venue. Under what circumstance would a court grant such a motion? A. If the defendant believes that the current venue is too expensive for them to afford. B. If the current venue is inconvenient for the parties and witnesses and a different venue is more appropriate. C. If the plaintiff has already filed similar cases in the same venue. D. If the court believes the defendant is likely to receive an unfair trial in the current venue. Answer B. If the current venue is inconvenient for the parties and witnesses and a different venue is more appropriate. Explanation. A motion for a change of venue is granted when a party demonstrates that the current venue is inconvenient for the parties or witnesses, or when justice would be better served in a different location. The defendant's financial concerns are not a valid reason for changing the venue unless they are tied to fairness issues. Question 26. While investigating a complicated issue between different departments within a company, a plaintiff files a motion for partial summary judgment on the issue of liability. Which of the following is true regarding partial summary judgment? A. It is granted when there are no genuine disputes of material facts regarding the issue of liability. B. It is only granted when the court has ruled on the entire case. C. It is a motion to compel the defendant to produce more evidence before trial. D. It is used to dismiss only a specific claim within the lawsuit without affecting other claims. Answer A. It is granted when there are no genuine disputes of material facts regarding the issue of liability. Explanation. Partial summary judgment is granted when there are no genuine disputes of material fact on a specific issue in the case, such as liability. It allows the court to resolve certain issues without going to trial on those issues, but the rest of the case may still proceed. Question 27. In an environment where different components must interact and there are concerns about evidentiary gaps, a plaintiff files a motion for sanctions under Rule 37. Which of the following could justify the granting of sanctions? A. The defendant fails to respond to discovery requests and has no valid excuse for the delay. B. The plaintiff fails to produce documents as required under the discovery rules. C. The defendant submits evidence that is later deemed irrelevant by the court. D. The plaintiff objects to the defendant's discovery requests without providing valid legal reasons. Answer A. The defendant fails to respond to discovery requests and has no valid excuse for the delay. Explanation. Sanctions under Rule 37 can be imposed if a party fails to comply with discovery obligations without a valid excuse. Sanctions may include fines, adverse jury instructions, or dismissal of claims. Failure to respond to discovery requests is a primary cause for sanctions. Question 28. During a comprehensive review of a process that needs improvement, a defendant files a motion to dismiss based on lack of jurisdiction. Which of the following is not a valid basis for lack of subject matter jurisdiction in a federal case? A. The plaintiff's claim arises under federal law. B. The defendant is foreign national. C. The plaintiff's claim is based solely on state law without any connection to federal law. D. The amount in controversy does not exceed the federal jurisdictional threshold. Answer. C. The plaintiff's claim is based solely on state law without any connection to federal law. Explanation. Subject matter jurisdiction is required for court to hear case. Federal courts have jurisdiction over cases that arise under federal law or involve diversity jurisdiction. Parties from different states and amount in controversy exceeds $75,000. Purely state law claim with no federal connection does not meet criteria for federal subject matter jurisdiction. Question 29. In a case where multiple parties have different objectives, a defendant files a motion for judgment on the pleadings. What does the court evaluate when considering a motion for judgment on the pleadings? A. The court evaluates the truth of the allegations in the pleadings and the sufficiency of the evidence. B. The court evaluates whether the pleadings themselves are sufficient to resolve the case without trial. C. The court evaluates the credibility of witnesses based on the pleadings alone. D. The court evaluates whether the defendant has complied with the procedural rules. Answer. B. The court evaluates whether the pleadings themselves are sufficient to resolve the case without trial. Explanation. A motion for judgment on the pleadings is filed after the pleadings are complete, and the court evaluates whether the case can be resolved based on the pleadings alone without further evidence or a trial. The court assesses whether the allegations in the pleadings, assuming they are true, are sufficient to resolve the case. Question 30. While analyzing the root causes of sequential problems in a case, a defendant files a motion for reconsideration of an adverse ruling. Under what condition can the court grant a motion for reconsideration? A. If the party presents new evidence that was not available at the time of the initial ruling. B. If the court determines it made an error in its original decision. C. If the party disagrees with the court's previous ruling. D. If the party has change of legal counsel. Answer A. If the party presents new evidence that was not available at the time of the initial ruling. Explanation. A motion for reconsideration is appropriate when new evidence has come to light that was not available at the time of the initial ruling, or if there has been a clear error of law in the court's previous decision. It is not merely an opportunity for a party to express disagreement with the ruling.